Welcome. You have found the show we call Real Men Don't Cry, or Do They? This is a podcast for men, and on this show, we will hear real-life stories from men about how they have navigated the complexities of being a man in this modern day. We are going to look at the boys don't cry way of thinking and how that has influenced them and how they have risen above societal pressures to be true to themselves. The focus of this show is men's real-world experiences, not just ideas and theories. I hope that you will learn from what they have discovered and use it in your life as well. Let's get into today's show. Hello, welcome to another episode of Real Men Don't Cry, or Do They? I'm Brandon Archer. I think we're on episode 19, maybe 20. Should have checked that before I hit record, but thanks to everyone listening for sticking with us. Really appreciate it. We've got a lot more guests coming. Today, I have Cam Issac, and I find it so great how I'm finding guests to be on this show. It's often somebody who's been on, and they'll go, hey, you got to talk to this guy, which is exactly what happened today. So, Cam, thanks for saying yes and being here today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's interesting how things work out. I've been asked twice in the last 2 weeks to tell my story on 2 different podcasts, and both just came to me. I didn't go looking. So
that's fantastic. Well, Thank you. So you want to just give a quick 30-second who you are, where you are in the world, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I am 43 years old. I live in Northern Alberta. My name is Cam Issac, and I'm a blue collar guy. I see myself as a coach for everyone around me, yet it's not something I've ever done as a career. Yet I'm an encourager. I love people. I love seeing people grow. I've been on quite a journey myself, and so I love cheering others on. And part of that is just in sharing my story.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like leadership to me. Do you have kids? I can't remember if you have kids.
Yeah, I have 3 kids, 2 bio boys, 14 and 17, and a daughter who we brought into our family. She came to us from Haiti, and she is 15, so right in between my boys.
Awesome.
A pretty tightly packed group, all teenagers right now, which I think is honestly the very best age.
Yeah. Trying to figure out how to be young, not adults, but older kids. Yeah, it's an interesting phase.
Yeah, I love it. And having the opportunity to have a daughter has expanded so much I've explored a lot of my own masculinity through having a daughter.
Interesting. What comes to mind when you...
Well, this is a theory I have that as men, okay, when we look at our relationships with our own sons, or we look at our relationships with our fathers, often the father-son relationship is a little more challenging relationship, at least it can be, and as well as the mother-daughter relationship can be. So there's something about polarity there. There's something about seeing ourselves in our children that often challenges us. And if we're not awake and aware, I think we can see that as conflict, or they rub us wrong, but it's not actually that. It's us seeing ourselves in our kids. And it provides amazing growth opportunities if we're open to it. And a daughter, there's like a complementing piece. That's often an easier relationship, and it certainly is for me. I'd be curious how other guys experience that.
Yeah, I find my relationship with my daughter way easier.
Yeah.
My son's 19, and
I feel like that's a topic that's not talked about a lot, but
it's fascinating you brought it up. And maybe we'll pull on that thread. But your timing on this is very interesting, because I'm working on a post about like what I've learned as a father. And one of the things I mentioned was me being irritated with my kids has nothing to do with my kids, like zero.
Yeah.
It's just triggering something in me. So you kind of touched on that. When
our kids
did
are some of our greatest teachers.
Oh my God. Yeah. When did you figure that out?
I'm 43 now. I remember feeling like in my late 30s, maybe around 39ish, feeling like, you know what, I think I'd be ready to have kids now. As in, I think I would be mature enough to raise them well, you know? So my kids were then already, they were all in the double digits. So, but it's just, yeah, I was unconscious for a good chunk of my kids' lives. Then I was also absent from a lot of their lives while I was so deep in my own shit. I gave them everything I could, but it just wasn't a lot for a while. And recently, I've been able to re-engage more fully in their lives.
Yeah. I think that's a common story though, man. Like, I know for me, there's a very clear, like, wow, I'm doing the best I can as a dad. Does it feel awesome? Maybe not, but I'm just kind of going through the motions. And then, I kind of woke up and I'm like, whoa, shit, I need to do better than this. This isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Do you find that, like, talking to other guys, they have similar experiences?
Yeah, I think so. I've tried to open up my own internal feelings about this, and I've even talked about it with my kids, saying like, as a father, you want to give everything you can to your kids. And when you don't give as much as you wish you could, it's easy to feel guilt and shame about that.
Yeah.
Yet just being there and showing up and being present with your own children is huge. Like that's more than all the other things,
Yeah. I've shared this before, but this is making me think of what you said is when we got separated, the kids were very young, like I want to say Ryder was 4. And I said to this young guy who was like 19, because he had grown up in a similar situation where his parents like split when he was young. And I'm like, what do I do, man? And all he said was be there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And powerful, because it made me actually choose a path of like, okay, I hear you.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. And I think it's actually okay. I didn't know what it meant. It's funny you say like late 30s, you're like, I think I'd be a good dad now, but it just doesn't seem to be the way society works.
Yeah.
What patterns did you see yourself modeling when your kids were young? Meaning, like, I guess where I'm going with that is, did you do things with your kids or speak to them a certain way that you said you would never do to your kids because you were treated that way and you hated it?
I wouldn't say it like that exactly. No. I was raised in a very, very traditional home. I was raised in a fundamentalist Christian environment, quite a religious environment. Church and community was very much a part of my upbringing. Along with that was very traditional parenting methods. And I love my parents. We have pretty good relationship. It hasn't always been that way, but we've worked at it. And so I say this from a place of really a lot of love, admiration, and appreciation for my parents. They did the best they could with what they knew. And that's how I started parenting in much the same way, a lot of the same reward and punishment. But having kids changed me. It fundamentally changed me. And I started questioning my beliefs, the beliefs I'd been taught and handed. And really, when I drilled down to the core, it's like, what changed within me by having kids? It's the belief I was handed was that at our core, inside, we are bad. The core of us is bad, and we need saving from that. Having kids changed that within me. I wrestled with that for a while, but eventually I was like, no, we're good at the core. Yes, we have layers, conditioning, stuff on top of that often is shit we got to deal with. Yes. But at the core, oh, we're pure love. We're pure light. And that's, in a nutshell, that's the biggest thing having kids did for me. So from that came a change in beliefs, worldview, how I parent, everything. But when having kids, looking in that innocent face, experiencing them day to day, it's like, no, this version of God that we've been taught, where if I screw up or don't believe the right things, I could be cast away from the Father. No, no. My kid could do the worst thing imaginable. He's still going to be my kid. I'm still going to love him. And so I fundamentally had to change my ideas of how the universe works. So I'll be eternally grateful for my kids for that. I mean, they were the catalyst that got those wheels turning within me.
Yeah, that's a massive, massive shift.
Yeah.
Because that we're fundamentally bad versus like when you wake up and you're like, well, wait a minute, that's not true.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
And then you start searching for proof that it's not true. And then you find the proof and then you're like, oh shit, I've been doing life backwards. Yeah. The power of kids is unbelievable. And for me too, it's because I grew up in a religious household, and punishment reward too, for sure. It felt like a hell of a lot more punishment than reward. But I recently kind of re-engaged with my mom after almost a decade of not. And she started to like turn our relationship between her and I back on me, and it was my fault. And I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't work. I have kids now, and there's nothing in the world my kids could do where I would cut them out of my life.
Yeah.
That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
And it hit her pretty hard. I think she heard me, but that was I was taught like your partner is more important than your kids, and your relationship with God is more important than your kids. And I'm like, yeah, that's fucked.
Well, as we grow, we expand in love. If we're doing the work, if we're evolving, we expand our experience of love, right? So if we were raised in an environment where there were conditions attached to love, part of the ascension process is learning what unconditional love is. And for me, that's been the journey of fatherhood. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So how did you apply figuring out what unconditional love is to yourself?
What's the word? It's inexorably tied to honesty for me. I was raised in a sort of environment where I learned to wear the nice guy mask, the good boy mask. I learned to wear that mask as a way to be accepted, win approval, be okay within my family, within my community. And it also taught me how to be a liar. And that has been the most challenging journey of adulthood for me, is learning how to be truthful all the time, and primarily with myself. That journey home has been a long and challenging journey. The more honest I am with me, the more honest, and by extension, the more honest I am with others. But the more honest I am with me, the more I see me, I understand me, and see the magic that is me. The more I uncover, the more of the shit I dig through, the more I uncover the pure gold that is inside, the more I love what I find. It's beautiful. Each of us are absolutely majestic beings, and the wildest, most rewarding journey of life is finding that gold inside.
When did you figure that out?
Well, I'm someone who tends to take a while. I take a while to figure stuff out, but I do it thoroughly. And really, I think most people can, if they're honest, can identify with this, that at some point in life, you're hit with a sledgehammer. That's just tends to be how a lot of us wake up. If you haven't learned to listen to the whispers, eventually it's going to get louder and louder and louder until something just flattens you and you wake up. And moving on from there, yeah, you you start to hear the whispers sooner.
Yes.
But for me, that event was the kind of the climax, the high point or the low point, however you want to look at it, was through 2022. I'd been feeling physically worse and worse and worse. Now that had come out of an episode with mental illness, where I'd been experiencing anxiety in ever increasing ways. Like my body was screaming at me. And because I didn't really have experience with this level of anxiety, I was trying to push through. And the harder I pushed, the louder it screamed. And eventually I pushed so hard that it turned into a depression as well. And that is a hell that I would not wish on anybody. It was one of the scariest times in my life because I didn't know what was happening. I'd never felt this way before. I had never felt this shitty. Like the color had drained out of my world. And climbing out of that hole was one of the most difficult things I have ever done. When you got to put one foot in front of the other, keep moving forward, believing in something that life can get better, and climbing, digging out of that hole. It was a long and challenging process. Now, I did climb out of that hole. Through the year of 22, I was mentally started feeling really, really good again as my body was declining. And what had happened was, in the depths of my mental illness, because my vibration was so low, that's when cancer actually started within my body, within my chest. And so by the time I was diagnosed in late 2022, it was stage 4 lymphoma. And I was in rough shape. It was progressing fast, and we needed to act quickly. And we did. I was rushed to Edmonton. That's my nearest city. And I was in the Cross Cancer Institute there. They were running tests, figuring out the best plan of action. I had a few complicating factors, so it took us a bit to figure out what's the best way to approach this. While I was in that hospital receiving my first round of chemotherapy, I got a call from my cardiologist for a totally separate issue, because I'd been diagnosed with Marfan syndrome. It's a connective tissue disorder. And the way it affected me is that they were calling me to tell me I had an aneurysm on my aorta. So I had a 2-inch aneurysm right above my heart. So it's a weak spot in the high pressure pipe there that could blow. So 2 of these major diagnoses within a week, unrelated, but both life-threatening. And that was the sledgehammer. And it hit really hard. I was conscious enough at that point, awake and aware enough in my spirit to be like, oh, this is not coincidence. I'm going to live. I know that. I've been through so much shit already that could have easily taken me out. I'm going to live, but I'm also looking squarely at death, and I'm not avoiding that stare. And so to really examine my own mortality, to look at death, I like to figure things out. And so I took the approach of, what is death? I want to understand it more. I want to figure out what this thing is that we all go through. That's a given. And yet it's largely an unknown, and it's something we tend to ignore and deny will happen to us eventually. And yet here I was, and I faced death. And for me, a huge part of my process involved listening to people who had died and come back. So like near-death experience stories, where there's freak accidents, medical emergencies, whatever, where someone flatlines, but then is able to come back, and listen to the stories they tell, because it is fascinating. And you listen to hundreds of those and you realize, oh, okay, death is this thing, this very fascinating thing that is really not as much of a mystery as we make it. We can listen to what people tell us about it, And through that experience, I lost my fear of death. I discovered the joy in life and I lost the fear. Death will come at some point. It's nothing to be feared. It's nothing to worry about. And I'm here to live each day to the fullest. So I got clear on a lot of things through that process. I'm not sure where your question was leading up to this.
No, it's great. I'm just listening to your story. It's powerful for people to hear that. You said something incredibly, I think it's important, but it could get skipped over. You said the whispers that are there before that we ignore get louder when you kind of face death. Those whispers
they get louder if we ignore them.
Yeah. How do you, looking back, were the whispers always there that you needed to deal with something?
Yeah. At 17 years of marriage, my wife sat me down and had a conversation with me that really changed my entire existence. And I'm not here to tell her story, but I will say that honesty can bring you to unexpected places. Honesty is always the right policy, and sometimes it can be the hardest thing ever. So it fundamentally changed my nervous system, or made me more aware of my body, because it's like I went into shock. And my nervous system has never been the same. Now, I say that event gave me the gift of anxiety because I refused to be a victim of anything. And what I mean by gift is that it made me aware of my body. And so the process since then, in the 7 years since then, has been a process of learning to listen to my body more closely as I learn. It's a learning process. But like I was talking about, kind of the most challenging point of that whole process was when I went through extreme anxiety and coupled with depression. So that's what I would call mental illness. But it's like, whoa, okay, my body is wise. It knows. And it's actually trying to help me. It's, I am not my body. This is my avatar, my meat suit, but I'm in my body and it's wise. And my body and I are traveling this journey together, and I can't fight against it. We're meant to work together. So part of this process of experiencing anxiety is learning to listen to my body, to be honest. And the further I go with that, the more into alignment I come. Yeah.
So before that talk, and you said it kind of hit you with anxiety, what was your relationship to anxiety and stress before then?
I had never experienced it in that kind of a visceral, physical way. But I would say in my childhood experience, growing up in as good a home as I did, my first encounters with anxiety revolved around religion. And the fear that was taught, the fear of death, the fear of hell, what would happen to me if I didn't follow these steps. And, often wielded by individuals, pastors within that religion that, some were good, some were not so good. But that was my first encounter with anxiety as a child.
So today, what's your relationship with anxiety?
It's my friend now. It's like a sidekick that's there. It's becoming quieter and quieter all the time as I learn to listen to those fine whispers, right? When I hear it speak or notice it, feel it in my body, I'm like, okay, I notice what's going on. What are you trying to tell me? And so it's a teacher. I see it as a teacher. It's not here to run the show either. And more recently, as I've been coming into closer and closer alignment myself, I notice this is what peace feels like. I can lay in bed at night when I close my eyes, when I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like in those quietest moments with just me. This is what peace feels like. And I will never take this feeling for granted. Ever.
How are you passing on that knowledge to your kids?
Yeah, I wonder that too. I think it has to do with just everyday life, the opportunities that present themselves. Lately, I've had some opportunities with my youngest child. He's 14. And, he's a kid who has always excelled in school. Things come easily to him. He gets good grades. So he's the last one in our family to get his learner's license. He had to try a few times to get that thing. And I could see the building frustration in him because he was unused to this sort of challenge. And yeah, there was one time where, he didn't quite pass that test and I could see it hitting him hard. And that's just where I said, okay, buddy, I'm going to teach you a hack here. I'm going to teach you something because it's easy to go home and sit in your room and just but I said, feel these emotions. Feel all of the emotions. Yep. Let them fully feel them all, experience them, and then move them through your body. So he likes to run with his dog. And I told him, go for a run, get out, go move energy around in your body, do something hard and see how you feel after. You'll feel a lot different than if you just go sit in the corner in your room because you're actually metabolizing those emotions. Yeah. So that's how I think the opportunities present themselves in real life with our kids.
Yeah. I'm listening to you.
He had another incident where he was with a group of his friends recently and they were doing some stuff that someone got mad at. And, he was telling me, Dad, I didn't even want to do it. I was trying to tell them we shouldn't, but I didn't want to be left out. So I was kind of tagging along and I was like, see? So there is a voice inside of you talking to you. Notice it. That voice is your friend. That is your guide. That is your ally. So never shush it. Never quiet it so much that it stops talking, right? Yeah, maybe the situation got a bit messy, but it taught you something. There is that inner voice and you heard it, right? So I did my best not to shame him or anything. Yeah, we've all been teenagers. We've all done dumb shit. But to teach him you notice that? Yeah.
I have a friend who, because I had a question for my friend. I'm like, okay, how do you know the internal voices, what's intuition and what's trauma or stress or anxiety? What's the difference? And he put it the best way I've ever heard it put is the loud screaming voice is the anxiety and the whisper is the intuition. And I think that's valuable because for me on my journey, I had a lot of anxiety, a ton for my whole life. And that's all I could. It's not that I couldn't hear the whisper. It's just the screaming voice kind of overrode it. I think the real trick is to listen to both because the screaming one is this needs to be dealt with or whatever it might be. And the whisper is and that's the higher path. That's the thing where I find alignment with me.
Yeah.
That's my higher me speaking, going, hey, don't do that. Or, hey, I know you hear that screaming voice, but here's the real thing that is alignment. I mean, I was going to ask you what alignment means to you because you've used the term a couple times. And it can be confusing if you've never delved into that. Are you in alignment or not? Because we go through life just getting shit done.
Yeah, here's where I do have some strong opinions about this. I think that as men in our society, we're kind of handed these cultural beliefs, societal beliefs. And one of them is that men have a limited range of emotions that they're allowed to express. And anger being the go-to, I'm a man. I can always show anger. If I'm angry, fuck, you'll know it, you know? And so evolving as a man is learning to, yes, experience anger, learning not to be destructive in that angry state. That's a big one. But learning to experience the whole range of emotion. And we often think as women as more emotional beings. Yes, a woman is a container of emotion. Yes. And as men, we also experience the whole range of emotions. And the more we allow ourselves to experience, the more fully expressed we can be. So for me, learning to actually feel every emotion, to allow it to fully move through my body. So if that means getting angry, for me, getting angry is anger is one of the more difficult emotions to feel. That has a lot to do with my childhood upbringing. So for me, that's where some of my work has been. To not keep my anger so low down in my stomach that I never notice it, but to actually give it a voice and to let my anger talk and experience it. Okay, I'm angry. Let it express it, move it through my body, journal, listen to Metallica, whatever, right? And Metallica is some of the best music for shadow work. That's, again, my musical taste. But for me, everything has a soundtrack. And so shadow work does too. But learning the full expression of emotion is some of the most rewarding work you can do as a man. And this is really fighting back against these societal and cultural beliefs. But this is where a lot of our growth is as men, I believe. Getting into community with other men in a safe environment is a huge part of that. Learning how to fully express ourselves with other men, iron sharpening iron, but men that have got your back is just one of the best environments to do personal growth work.
Yeah, it's funny. Emotions in men, God damn it. It frustrates me, right? For a lot of reasons. My personal journey has been I have an anxious attachment style, so my emotions have always been on the top. That's not true. There was a time when they got beat down, but I've never really had a problem accessing them. Putting it to words, possibly different. But it is a fallacy that women are more emotional than men. That is complete horseshit. And I've got to dig up this study that they're finding men are actually more emotional than women. We've just been repressed.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll like this stat. This goes back to childhood. This goes back to infancy, where an infant girl will hold eye contact with the caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
A boy, his eyes will dart back and forth. So we assume he doesn't need the same amount of attention. But he's already biologically like, he's a protector. He's like, where's the danger? This is the DNA biology stuff behind it. So we start off not giving boys the same attention as girls. We allow them to feel their emotions, and boys we think aren't going to show them. Like, no, we're humans first. Our gender has jack shit to do with our emotional bandwidth.
Yeah.
So the evolution of masculinity and being a man in this day and age is you got to tap into that shit, man, because you're getting left behind.
Yeah.
Like you're getting left behind in the evolution of what's going on for humans.
Yeah. And this is a picture that has helped me a lot, meant a lot to me. So we look at, let's say, if you look at the indigenous people that used to live all over on our land, the tribal peoples that lived here before this land was colonized. How did they live, right? The men were the protectors. If they were moving to a new area, the men would go ahead, make sure it was safe. If any animals needed to be taken care of, predators, whatever, like the men made sure it was safe, then the women could come in and set up camp. They all work together at that, but the men are by nature protectors. Safety is what we offer and is one of the things we offer. Now, in an intimate relationship, I believe that for a man to offer safety is to go first in vulnerability, to lead the way in vulnerability, and and lead the way in being vulnerable with his woman to show her that she is safe with him.
Yep, I fully agree. And we're at a place where, what does that even look like? And guys think, oh, when I show emotion, I will be perceived as weak. But the magic is the vulnerable. See what you think of this. This has been my experience. I agree with you. Got to go first. Otherwise, you're playing a boy mom scenario. Oh, she needs to go first. Bluntly, like without shame, like you need to grow up if that's the way you're thinking about things. Because a fully embodied masculine man is in touch with his emotions, knows how to be vulnerable. But be vulnerable doesn't mean being a hot mess all the time.
Yeah.
It means I know what's going on. I'm struggling with this, and it's making me show up in the relationship like this right now, and I'm working on it. And it is short, to the point, because then she's like, oh, he's okay. Emotions. He just modeled how he's going to show compassion, empathy for when emotions show up in the relationship. So now I feel safe as a woman to show that. And I've done it really well sometimes, and I've done it total shit sometimes.
Yeah.
So I have enough data points is like, this is very, very real.
Yeah. This is where, as men, it's so important to get into community with other men, because a woman is never supposed to be our everything, right?
Yes.
We need to be able to take our shit somewhere else and work through it with other men who can. There's an honesty between men that is impressive. And when we can work through our stuff in that container, we can also then come to our woman in a more healed manner, with more confidence, fully express ourselves to her. But she's not meant to carry all of our weight. No.
That can be confusing for women, has been my experience. But it's the path, like it's the way that needs to happen, because we're talking a little bit about a healed man. There's a lot of women that aren't healed, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like sharing this for the audience, it seems relevant. Like an unhealed woman may try to mother you if you show up vulnerably. She may try to hold those emotions for you. And that's when you put your big boy pants on and go, I got it, babe. It's okay. I just needed you to know this is what's going on for me. I don't need you to do anything for me. It's a version of it. That's a quick and dirty version. But I think it's important that that's said, because both genders are in a process of healing the connection that we have between male and female. And I've seen it very many times when I'm thinking of a few instances in the last 6 months where it's like, she really wanted to step in and like do something for me because I shared what was going on. I'm like, that's not your responsibility. It's my responsibility. I'm just telling you what's going on. And it actually derailed her a little bit, because her worth, my assumption, I'm gonna preface this. My assumption was her worth in the relationship partly was tied into, oh, Brandon's going through something. It's my turn to step in and like hold him up. I'm like, that's not what I'm asking you for. Like, there's times, of course, where I want that and I need that. But generally, no, because I do have men to process my stuff with. It completely changes the dynamic. So men listening, if you're doing your own work, you got to be prepared that it's going to feel strange for a while in the relationship container, because you're throwing away the preconceived ideas of what it's supposed to look like and feel like.
Yeah, it's a common trap. So many couples fall into it. How many women have tried to fix a man, right? We are responsible for us. As men, we are responsible for us. And we all want to live in a better world. We all want to see a better world. And that starts with personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It does. And for me, I was after my marriage, I was in a 3-year relationship with a woman who I found a great deal of healing with, and we had really good chemistry. And eventually I got to the place where I went through just an extremely challenging time where I knew within myself that there is a divine love, how do I describe it? There is a love that exceeds anything I've experienced on earth in this lifetime. The more work I did on myself, the more I knew it. And I ended that relationship. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I knew that I would rather be alone than settle for anything less than what I truly desired. So in the moments in our lives where something happens, we make a decision, there's a change of direction, there's transition. Those are valuable moments. Often we have the most clarity in those moments. It's important to sit with ourselves, but often we have the most clarity in those moments and write it down. What is my highest, biggest dream? It's important to be honest with ourselves on that too.
Yeah. I'm watching the time, and we're just ripping through the minutes here. I want to kind of wrap it up because I'm trying to keep these to 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
Got my traditional 2 questions to end it out. First one is, what message do you have for a younger version of yourself?
Trust yourself. There's nothing wrong with you.
Common theme when I ask that one. What message would you like to leave for men listening to this podcast?
Allow yourself to feel all of your feelings. Learn to feel them all. Learn to express them all and get into community with other men.
Beautiful. Cam, I knew the least about you out of any guest I've ever had before we hit record, and this was amazing. We may have to talk about doing another one. It feels like there's a lot left on the table. But
there's a lot more, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience with men. I know this is going to be super helpful to a lot of guys.
Yeah, I'd be honored if it was, yeah.
Okay, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to be here today. I honestly hope you found something you can use in your life. And I hope you found some relief in knowing that you're not the only one with challenges. We can be very isolated as men. If you don't have support in your life, please reach out to someone. It's okay to need help. It doesn't mean that you're less of a man. In fact, it takes a courageous man to know when it's time to ask for guidance. Until next time, brother.